There we go. What's going on, Drew?
How we doing?
Good, man. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Awesome, dude. Well, appreciate you hopping on. Excited to hop into this, man. So, we'll get the ball started. We got people joining in here, so yeah, man. We're just gonna kind of chat it up, have a good discussion here. Obviously, for some good awareness and everything, and for baseball and all that. So, I'd love for you to just kind of kick off and tell us a little about your story, who you are, and then we'll kind of dive from there.
Yeah. I appreciate you having me. I was pretty excited when we got connected. So, yeah, my name is Drew Robinson, former professional baseball player. Played parts of 3 seasons in the major leagues with the Rangers and Cardinals. Played a total of parts of 12 seasons professionally with the Rangers, Cardinals, and Giants. But most people will probably know me these days as the mental health guy. um, I unfortunately made a really bad decision in 2020 and attempted suicide. Thankfully, I survived, and even more thankfully, I came out of it with a sense of purpose to hopefully help people never get to the point that I got to, and experience that level of hopelessness that I was experiencing. So um, the full story is a little bit longer than that, obviously, but I just think right now with the state of the world and all the things that are going on, I think it's unfortunate that there's a lot of things that could be triggering people in a negative way. So that's why I try to help talk about my story, talk about it openly, and really just kind of be an example sometimes of what talking about mental health can look like, because it doesn't need to be such a scary topic. I know that firsthand. I was so scared to talk about these things and talk about anything other than surface level, superficial things, and anything other than acting like I had it all figured out. So again, I'm kind of an example of what can happen on both sides of the spectrum. So hopefully people buy into the message that I've felt called to do since my incident, and hopefully help people never experience the level of um, isolation, hopelessness, and really just kind of overall depression that I experienced the couple months leading up to my attempt in April of 2020.
No, absolutely, man. You're a true inspiration, and what you're doing is making a huge impact. And I actually talk about this a lot on behalf of my company. A lot of us, like honestly, all of us, basically, we talk to therapists. Like we're super big on mental health, and we're super big on all that stuff. So, that's why I love this, and this is a great conversation. But another part of it is we obviously have a lot of young followers, and baseball is a game of failure, and I think that's something that is known, right? You get a hit 3 out of 10 times, and you're the best in the world. So but the game of failure can have a big impact, I feel like, on, young kids feeling like they can't find success, or, life is a failure or whatever that may be. I just want to get your take on baseball as a game of failure and how kind of kids can, overcome what that is.
Yeah. Well, first I want to say it's awesome to hear that you and your company take it seriously and that you're so open about it. I think that's one of the things that can be worked on with the this whole movement, is just kind of like talking about it the same way we talk about our physical health, and almost adding a little bit of a brag tone to it of saying, yeah, I do go to therapy. I try to take care of myself. Why wouldn't I?
It's the
Just one
same
of
thing
those
as going
things.
to the gym. That's how I approach it,
Exactly.
man.
So I say the same comparison. If you went and ran a couple miles, or had a consistent workout regimen, and then you were talking about it with your coworkers, a lot of times everyone would congratulate you or say that they're proud of you. But if you did the same exact thing and said, yeah, I went to my therapy session this morning with my therapist, and we talked about some really cool things. Do you mind if I share? I think people would like have a little bit of hesitation. So I just think making the tone, and the understanding around it, which is just as simple as just talking about it the same way we talk about everything else. So, and then obviously the more simple comparison of just venting to our friends and family when we have a little bit of an inconvenience in our life, that's a form of therapy. And that's the exact thing that I experience when I do my weekly therapy sessions, of just getting things off my chest. For some reason, feels better sometimes. So thinking of it in simple terms, and adding a little bit of a brag tone to it, because realistically, I think it's pretty cool that someone's willing to take themselves seriously and give themselves the best chance to be the best version of themselves. But to your other point with baseball as a game of failures, that's a main thing that I heard and I still hear a lot. And I think it's obviously it's true because we in on the hitting side we do experience more outs than hits, but I feel like it's worth like just trying to put a spin on that as well too with like wording, just putting it's a game of lessons. I think everyone can agree that when you go through challenging times and you come out of it the other end, even though it was really it was really uncomfortable in the moment and it was not fun to go through that challenge. When you get through it, eventually you're able to take a deep breath and realize, dang, that actually taught me this or that, or it taught you something that you needed to learn, or something that you might be happy that you learned. So I think obviously in baseball it happens so often, so it feels like it's not learning as much in the moment because it might have just happened 30 minutes before in your other at bat. But realistically, every time you have a failure or a challenge, it can be looked at as an opportunity to learn something. So, and I know it's not going to be the case all the time, just because it could get overwhelming and it can get out of control if you go through a slump. I mean, I'm the first one to attest that an 0 for 30 slump does not feel good, and it's probably not worth trying to just create positivity. But I think just having that choice of like, okay, when this uncomfortable feeling does come to an end, I'm sure I'll be able to look back at this and learn something from it, instead of just like spiraling in the moment. Like, I'm never going to get a hit again. I'm not good at baseball. It's like, there's plenty of evidence both ends. So if you buy into the immediate slump that you're in, you can probably convince yourself you're not very good at baseball, but you also have the evidence on the other end that I got to this point because I'm good at baseball. So whatever side that you want to buy into and tell yourself is true. So I just think it's worth putting as much intention on the overall process and how it's good and how it's can teach you something, rather than focusing on how the game is it's a game of failures, rather than it's a game of lessons and it's challenging me. And in that sense, you also just kind of build a little bit more confidence, because every time you do get through one of those lessons or those challenges, it just naturally creates a little bit more awareness and a little bit more strength because you did get through it. So I just think it's worth every once in a while adding a little spin, like, nope, it's just a game of lessons instead of a game of
No,
failure.
100%. 100%. I think baseball teaches you so much too. Right now, like running a business, I played college ball, but running a business, it's the same thing, right? Like some days you're 0 for 4 and like sales aren't great or something goes wrong, and you gotta just find a way to bounce back and not let that trickle into your following day. So it's the same thing. It's taught you lessons that kind of help you pick yourself up in life too.
Exactly. Yeah, I
Um,
just think it's important. Like I said, there's always two sides of the spectrum that we can buy into or join into, and like let it feel like it's true. So the more that we can stay in the middle of that sweet spot on the ends, and just kind of do that rhythm back and forth, instead of just trying to be always on one side, and then every time you drift a little bit to one side, try to resist it. It's just not really going to be beneficial, because the more you try to resist the discomfort, the heavier it's going to get, and the more weight it's going to bring to you. And again, I'm a perfect example of what can happen if you just try to push away all the bad and all the uncomfortable parts, because it's just going to happen. Life is just not going to be smooth all the time, but it's worth going through for sure.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that kind of leads into this is, like expectations, right? So as like when you're growing up, like as a bass player, your dream is to make it to the big leagues, and that's something that you did, and not many of us can get there, right? But I think, growing up playing travel ball, especially nowadays, like everything's on social, everybody's seeing it, who's hitting the home runs, who's posting this, who's doing that. The expectations of going D1 or going pro bowl, I think, it really take a toll on people too, instead of just enjoying the ride and being there. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the expectations you had when you obviously got to the big leagues, and you said, I remember you saying you had some struggles in the big leagues from a performance aspect, like living up to all of that in your head of what you think things should be, but in reality it might be something else.
Man, yeah, it's a really prevalent idea or concept that's in my life, and it's so universal. But obviously for baseball too, and I think I word it as, well, I don't think I usually word it as like destination happiness, which again is universal, of always wanting to be the next step, and never taking time to appreciate where you're at. I think for me, I got so caught up in, and it was more like subconscious. Like I said, I didn't think about these things this deeply. I just kind of went with the flow, and worried and felt the sensations of anxiety, but didn't actually address them and didn't know what it was actually meaning. I couldn't articulate it. But I think the idea of managing expectations is just so critical, because at one point, a lot of people are right where they wanted to be 10 years prior or somewhere near it. So like for me, at one point, all I ever wanted to do was just start a game on varsity high school baseball.
Right.
I wasn't good enough my first 2 years. So I was sitting the bench and like, I was just sitting there, man, I can't wait until I get to like start one of these games or just get into one of these games. And when I did, I was like, oh, I can't wait to start. And then eventually hit my growth spurt and started playing my junior year. And then I started doing well that year, and I was like, dang, I'm starting to get some attention. My brother got to play pro ball. I can't wait. I would love to be able to play pro ball. And then once I got there, it was like, all right, I need to get to high A, I need to get to double A, triple A. It was like I was always focused on what was next. And like I think I just got caught up in the idea that if I sat to appreciate where I was at, that was gonna mean I'm being complacent. Which just isn't the case. You can be appreciative of where you're at or proud of where you're at or happy with who you are in the moment while also trying to make the adjustments or achieve the goals that you set for yourself. The process is the process because it takes time to do it. So why not spend some time in being proud of yourself or being nice to yourself instead of always beating yourself up? So I say that because in sports specifically, it's just very easy to focus on everything you're bad at, or just focus on trying to improve your weaknesses instead of trying to master what you're good at.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important to manage those expectations of when you get to where you want to be or when you're in the process right now. It's like just take some time every once in a while. It takes like 5 seconds to think about it, or you can spend some more time, maybe journal on it, maybe have a conversation with it about your with your like family about how, man, remember when we thought about getting me to this level. But the expectations of having to do something one way, I think, is more to your point of having to go to D1 or having to go pro ball. um, there's too much evidence these days that there's no one way to get there. So no matter what the goal is, if your expectations is to get there, it could take a back road, but realistically, there's so many different avenues to your goal that you're setting. So that's why I think being present is so important, because that creates a little bit more awareness, which can create a little bit more adjustability for when those blows start getting thrown at you. That might detour you off that one specific plan that you had. And then, like I said, you could take a back road and make some adjustments, but being present in the moment and knowing what's happening, I just think it's worth putting some time and thought into it.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's like it's so interesting because I now that I have that same perspective too. It's like the journey is everything. Like it's corny as that is, but like when you get to the destination, it's not as cool as you thought it would be, and you have to kind of appreciate the moment of like the thing in the moment of just growing and building day to day. And it's again, it's one of those things that you kind of wish you knew when you were growing up playing baseball, where you just like you said you're trying to just get to the next goal, and then you get there and you're like, oh man, like what happened about playing under the lights at 15 years old with my buddies, like you kind of lose
Yeah,
that a little
exactly.
bit.
Yeah, that process. That's what I'm saying. You're in the process that 10 years from now, you're going to look back on and be like, wow, man, I really enjoy, even though that one little phase of it was pretty uncomfortable and I was kind of a wreck, like the whole process as a whole was actually really fun. And I totally appreciate what I was able to get through to experience this. And I say that because I'm another really good example of that when it comes to baseball, because 2 seasons in my minor league career, I was the worst player in the league statistically. And you can ask any of my teammates, I was a wreck. I was crying after games. I was calling my family and saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get released tomorrow." Like I was just a roller coaster of emotions and just spiraling, honestly. But looking back now, again, part of the whole process, and I don't think it would have made it any more comfortable in the moment. But just understanding that those 2 seasons actually taught me more than the seasons that I went out and did performed better. So it just that's what I mean by the challenges, and some of the most uncomfortable challenges can teach you something and most likely will. So that's to your point though, the enjoying the process or wishing I knew what I knew now. It's like we do know what we know now and we can use it for this
Yeah,
next journey that we're on. So but yeah, for the kids that are getting caught up in maybe some of the other things that the destination happiness or getting to the goal, it's never going to be as good as you think, and it's never going to be as bad as you think. So being present in the moment and just like, let me just try to enjoy this time with my best friends or whatever the case may be. It's just so important. I feel like it would really change the dynamic of a lot of people's quality of life.
absolutely. And you're talking about the process. Can you talk about your process of kind of coming back and getting back to pro ball? And then we'll obviously get to that like amazing moment that we'll talk about. But Talk about like getting back to pro ball from your journey and what that was like for you, to get there.
Yeah, yeah, man. It was such an interesting process again, mainly because it started by accident. I attempted suicide. I lost my right eye. I had to lay down. I couldn't bend at the waist. I couldn't lift anything over 10 pounds for like 4 months. So like physically, I was just not ready to do anything. And I had just lost an eye. So I was just totally accepted that I wasn't going to be playing baseball again. But I just had a random thought one day. I went like a couple days after I was cleared to start doing normal activity. But I was like, I'm just going to go to the cages, reconnect with the guys that used to help me train in the off seasons. And I'm just going to go close this chapter and just swing the bat a couple more times and just hit a couple balls off the tee just to get that feeling again. Cause I had missed it, and that'll be me closing my baseball chapter. And when I got there and started hitting, I was actually hitting it all right. And then my body was just not ready, and I felt horrible physically. But the vision part, even though I just lost an eye, looked pretty similar. And I was like, man, this is interesting. And then we did a full hitting session. Like I had them scoot back and actually flip some to me to have me track it, and I was hitting all right. And I was like, man, guys, am I crazy for thinking I could do this? And they're like, shoot, why not? You don't have anything else going on right now. So I just kind of accidentally committed to it and I just kept showing up. And realistically, there was a big part of me that was just kind of waiting for my limit to hit, where I was just going to reach the end of my capabilities and like, okay, this tracking a ball in from a machine, or tracking an overhand, or having to track the ball while I was actually moving like on defense, or going outside with a bigger backdrop without the depth perception. I was just kind of waiting for me to reach my limit. And there was plenty of times where I actually did think I did reach my limit. And I had texted Diana. I'm like, man, this sucks, but I think I'm done. But again, I just kept showing up and just waited to see if I can make the adjustment. And ultimately, I was able to, I don't know, stick around long enough and convince the Giants to let me have an opportunity to come try out in spring training. And that's another part of this, is just having the most amazing support from the Giants, not just because of the extreme of my incident, but just the fact of the kind of humans they are, just how good of people they are. But then fast forwarding and getting to spring training and getting back into actual game action and not doing great, but still kind of holding my own, like having similar strengths that I had before. Again, all with one eye. And I was just like, man, this is crazy sometimes. But then I also got back into a lot of similar habits when I got back in that environment of some really, really rough self-talk, and just that unrealistic expectation. Again, like I need to be perfect. I need to hit a home run every single time, or hit the ball hard every single time, or make sure I get my best swing off, or don't make an error. Like, don't embarrass yourself. But then I also had this new perspective where, like, even though that was still ingrained in me, there was another voice that was like, you know what, let's chill. The fact that I'm just out here is good enough. I'm having fun. I'm trying my best. And again, that sounds cheesy sometimes, especially for people who try to have those unrealistic expectations and say that that's average talk. But it's like, what else can you ask of yourself? I'm working really hard. I'm trying my best. And then, yeah, ultimately being able to make the AAA team. And while going into spring training, I was well aware that the AAA team was opening up the season in my hometown in Las Vegas against the A's AAA team, which that stadium is like 3 miles from my house and where my incident happened. So getting to experience that with my friends, family, anyone that knew me, that had read the story or watched the story before, all in the same town that I grew up in, and then having even the doctors that saved my life, put me back together, my psychiatrist that supported me weekly with my therapy sessions, from an emotional standpoint, everybody got to experience it with me. And when I say I genuinely felt it when I was playing the game, is not a lie. I was physically feeling the presence of everybody just throwing love at me throughout the whole game, throughout the whole process. And like I said, it all kind of started by accident, which is just so crazy to think. But it was, like I said, it's one of those moments that I think about almost every single day. Like when I'm doing my meditation, sometimes when I am kind of struggling to think about something I'm grateful for, that's usually like my backup. Like, well, remember that time on April 12th or whatever it was? Like, got to experience the coolest moment of my life. So like I said, that was just a really special process. Since we've been talking about processes, that whole build up from, I think July 29th was the first day that I went to go hit. And then from then on until really July 22nd when I retired, it was just a continuous, like, let's see what can happen and let's hope for the best.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's hard enough to hit, a pro baseball with, like just it's crazy. You know what I mean? Like how many people could even get to that point? So the fact that you're able to work your way back and be there, that's incredible. And I know the one of the big moments that went super, was amazing was the home run that you had hit. What was that feeling like hitting that home run? I'm sure running around the bases, you either blanked out or you have a vivid memory of it. I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, definitely blackout mixed with like just the biggest, I don't know the description of it, like that feeling you get in your gut when you are about to just let out all the tears in the world.
Yeah.
And it was really cool too because it wasn't like a no doubter. So like I knew I hit it well, but I had some topspin on it. So I was just like, I had that big anticipation when I was running out the box, like hoping for it to get over the wall. So I had like that build up while running to first base. And eventually when it went over, I was like right before first base. And I just, like I said, the flood of emotions, because I also was like very specifically hearing my sister who just, she's always the loudest in the stadium. So I heard my sister and then obviously the whole section that was there for me from my family and friends, like I said, I could actually hear the difference in them versus the rest of the crowd. But
Wow.
really the whole stadium, like I said, I think a lot of people were there that had known me throughout my life since I grew up in Vegas. So it was really cool, even though I was the away team, seeing how many people were cheering. And then, like I said, the flood of emotions, just bawling my eyes out, running around the bases, knowing just having a quick like 3 seconds, 5 seconds, however long it took to think about very quickly the whole process from April 16th to where I was at that moment, and getting to experience the highest of highs in baseball. And then touching home, and of course, the first person of the entire stadium, or I guess the whole section, because I knew where they were, but out of the whole section, immediately locked eyes with Diana. It was just one of those like movie script, storybook scripts that I just is way out of my hands, and I was just so grateful to be able to experience it.
No, absolutely, man. That's amazing. And I'd love to kind of talk about today, what you're doing with the Giants. You've mentioned them a few times. Kind of describe like your role and what's going on with the Giants, currently.
Yeah, so like I said, I retired in about three-quarters of the way through the season last year, and was lucky enough to have the Giants continue their support with me, and offer me a new role that they just saw an opportunity for me and for them of being a mental health advocate. Like I said, they feel like they're leading the ground or leading the way when it comes to mental health in baseball. And they had things in place already before my incident, with a full-time psychologist, sports psychologist, and then eventually hired a minor league psychologist. So having two separate, basically on-call therapists in the organization, that's their only job is to take care of the organization, and then having the mental performance coaches as well. We have a full department, and I just word myself as a bridge, because what their profession is literally life changing. It's superhero work. The fact that someone's able to put their struggles, emotions, whatever they're dealing with in life, which inevitably they have, like I said, everyone has it, and then for them to be able to balance or try to help guide other people with their struggles is just, like I said, superhero work. So I see myself as the bridge because, again, for 10 years of my career, really my whole life, even when my mom would try to take me to her therapy sessions when I was younger, I was just so not interested. And then as a player, even though I was struggling pretty severely internally, I was so apprehensive to ask for help myself and to admit that I didn't have everything under control at all times, which I'm learning now. It's just, how could I? How can anybody? Life is just too hard. So trying to be an example of, honestly, at times just being a reminder. If someone just kind of sees me, if one of the players sees me walking around, hopefully that's like a reminder to check in with themselves, like, how am I feeling? And then also to let them know that this work, committing to this work is very beneficial. Like I said, I've committed completely the last 2 years, to therapy, to trying to find the best mix of self-care routines for myself, and talk therapy trying to go through the process of medication and ultimately finding this technology of TMS therapy with Neurostar. All these things are scary for the first time if you haven't addressed it before. So I'm just trying to bridge that gap and make it a little bit more comfortable of a process for these players that might be feeling any kind of way or feeling similarly the way that I was. Because like I said, being a professional, I mean, just having any career on your hands while also trying to balance the at home life, it's really hard, especially being on the road as much as an athlete is. It gets very it can get overwhelming at times, and a lot of times, especially as a male in a competitive sport, we're taught to always just tough it out and tough it out, or just like forget about it, forget about it. But sometimes that's just not the case, and it's not going to happen, and it's going to be on your mind. So trying to let them know these, if anything, just go and talk to our professionals, and just get one less thing off your mind. So that way, when it is time to focus at 7 o'clock and perform, you can focus a little bit more intently, and hopefully that, like I said, it makes it a little bit more comfortable process for somebody. Or sometimes guys just kind of start talking to me about baseball, and then before you know it, we're talking for 40, 50 minutes about their childhood or their upbringing or their psychodynamics. I'm like, man, doesn't this feel good? Like, this is what therapy is, guys. It's really honestly kind of comforting, and it just feels good to get things off your chest. So now try to do it with someone who's actually professionally trained to guide it. That's what I've been doing. And then also trying to create a peer support program where guys are starting to do this within their relationships as teammates themselves. So again, just creating a little bit more comfortable space for people to share what they're feeling. And it doesn't always have to be bad. Sometimes people hold back the good stuff in baseball. You've heard the saying plenty of times, act like you've been there before. When you do
Yep,
well, it's
yep.
like, man, even when I do good, I can't show emotion. Like, what are you talking about? When I'm feeling bad, I gotta act like I'm not affected. But even when I do good, I gotta act like I've been there before. It's like, there's no winning here. I don't want to just be a robot. So just creating a comfortable space for people to just let their natural emotions come out, and then again, like I said, learn from them. So that's what I'm up to, and it's really the most fulfilling thing I think I've ever done, because I mean, I got to experience baseball after my incident, and then I also got to experience this when my story came out, of having a little bit of an impact on people's lives just by being myself and being an example of what mental health talk looks like and sounds like. And I could say it's more fulfilling to let people feel comfortable being themselves and not be judged for being themselves, rather than being an entertainer or a performer.
Absolutely, man. And this has been as amazing as I thought it would be. And I just want to leave off with again, we talked about the younger generation of baseball players growing up playing ball right now. Like, what pieces of advice would you kind of give to them as they're going to be going through this journey that you've been through from little league to the pros? What kind of advice could you give to them?
Yeah, I think like we touched on earlier, I think the most important part, especially for younger kids when they're really getting into baseball, is just simply enjoy it. And I don't even like to say the word just sometimes, because that makes it seem like it's a simple task. But sometimes for some reason it's hard to enjoy the little things. Who doesn't take things for granted, right? So try to have as much fun as you possibly can at all times when you're playing baseball, and never forget it. Never forget how much you looked up to so and so, your favorite player, and then when you eventually get to that point, never forget how much it meant to you to see that player, be a good person, and then also and like, so that'll kind of like help them when they do get there, that they can be a good example. But in the moment, like I said, just have as much fun as possible, and try not to get so caught up in results, because ultimately they're all going to even themselves out no matter what. And it's funny, the more, as soon as you forget to, not forget, but don't focus as much on the good results start to take care of themselves, and then you're having even more fun. So like I said, focus on how much fun you're having, your effort, and use that as your guidance or your compass or your marker of excellence, rather than the results, because the results are going to vary as much. They go up and down no matter what you do. They're uncontrollable, but the things you can't control is having as much fun, being a good teammate, being a good learner, and being coachable. Like, for those things, those are the things I'm most proud about when I think back to my career. I feel like I was a good teammate. I feel like I was able to connect with my teammates well, and like again, the results were fun too. But now that I'm done playing, the thing I think about the most was the relationship that I created throughout my entire career. So just, I think having as much fun as possible and remembering that it is a game and that it's not going to be the end of the world when you have a poor result, because realistically, baseball is the best sport to have a bounce back because it's going to be happening the next day. So focusing on fun, effort, connection with your teammates, your coaches. It sounds cliche, but realistically, we just like to complicate things. So keeping it as simple as that, I think, will be a huge game changer.
100%. I'd say a lot of the cliche things are just honestly that's why they're cliche because they work. That's what it
Yeah,
is, man. It can be simple, but
exactly.
Drew, man, I really appreciate the time and what you're doing and changing, and I'm glad we were able to kind of have this discussion. And I hope you were able to make an impact on our followers and vice versa. So thank you again, man. I really appreciate it, and keep up the great work.
Absolutely, man. Like I said, appreciate you having me. It was great talking with you.
Absolutely, man. I'll catch up with you soon. Thanks again.